The door is open if you don't like my mother's jokes. My daughter-in-law publicly challenged me. Tired of the humiliation, an elderly woman finally rebels. After another cruel joke from her daughter-in-law, she responds, "If you don't like it, the door is open." Her son, for the first time, takes a stand and challenges his wife. The tension between them will change everything. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The sound of spoons hitting plates echoed through the kitchen like a symphony of contempt. Eleanor watched from the window as rain began to fall on the yard that she herself had planted, tree by tree, flower by flower, over 30 years in that house. At 72, her white hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her calloused hands firmly held the coffee cup she had reheated for the third time that morning. "Mom, aren't you going to eat anything?" Robert's voice sounded more like an obligation than genuine concern. He sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the job listings for the 100th time that month, while his wife Vanessa organized the groceries they had bought with Eleanor's pension money. "I'm not hungry," murmured Eleanor without turning from the window. In truth, she had woken up at 5 in the morning, as she always did, prepared breakfast for the whole family, and eaten only a dry piece of bread with butter. The rest she saved for Robert and Vanessa, who slept until almost noon every day. Vanessa sighed dramatically, tossing her blonde hair back in a way that Eleanor knew well. It was always the same gesture before she began her venomous comments. "You know, Eleanor, maybe if you took care of yourself a little more, ate properly, you wouldn't look so abandoned all the time." Robert didn't even raise his eyes from the newspaper. Eleanor felt that familiar stab in her chest, like a needle slowly piercing her. Vanessa continued, now addressing her husband with that tone of false concern she had mastered so well. "Robert, honey, I worry about your mother. She doesn't take care of herself, doesn't leave the house. It seems like she's given up on life. It's not healthy for someone her age." Eleanor finally turned, her brown eyes meeting Vanessa's. For a moment, she thought about responding, about saying that she woke up at 5 every day to prepare breakfast for a family that didn't even thank her, that her pension supported not just the house, but their whims, expensive clothes, and the dinners out they so enjoyed, that she hadn't given up on life, but perhaps life had given up on her. But she said nothing, as always. "Vanessa is right. Mom," Robert finally spoke, folding the newspaper with a sigh of frustration. "You need to take better care of yourself. What kind of example are you setting for Julie?" The mention of her granddaughter made Eleanor smile for the first time that day. Julie, at 16, was the only light in that increasingly dark house. But lately, even the young girl seemed distant, perhaps embarrassed by her grandmother's situation. "Speaking of Julie," Vanessa continued, opening the new purse she had bought at the mall the week before, "she needs money for the school field trip. $500. Eleanor automatically nodded. She never denied anything to her granddaughter, even if it meant cutting her own expenses. Vanessa held out her hand, waiting, and Eleanor went to the bedroom to get the money she kept in a sewing box. When she returned to the kitchen, Robert and Vanessa were whispering to each other. They stopped abruptly when she approached. It was always like this. Conversations that ceased when she arrived, glances that looked away as if she were an intruder in her own home. "Thanks, Grandma," said Julie, suddenly appearing in the kitchen, still in her pajamas. She gave a quick kiss on Eleanor's cheek and took the money from her mother's hands. "You're the best." For a moment, Eleanor felt important again, but the feeling didn't last long. "Julie, honey, go get ready. We need to leave," said Vanessa, checking her phone. "We're going to the salon. I need to touch up my roots, and you need a haircut for Anna's party." More expenses, thought Eleanor. But she said nothing. She never said anything. The rest of the morning passed in heavy silence. Robert continued looking for work, without much enthusiasm, while Vanessa got ready for another day of social engagements. Eleanor stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes she hadn't dirtied, cleaning a house that others made messy. Around noon, the family left. Robert for an interview that would probably lead nowhere, like the other 20 in recent months. Vanessa and Julie for their beauty appointments. Eleanor was left alone as always. She sat in the living room armchair, the one she had bought when Robert was born, more than 40 years ago. The fabric was faded, but it was still comfortable. She picked up the photo album she kept on the coffee table and began to flip through it. There she was, young and radiant, on her wedding day with Joseph. He had passed away 8 years ago, the victim of a sudden heart attack, leaving her with the responsibility of caring for the family alone. There was Robert as a child, smiling in her arms. When had he stopped smiling at her that way? When had she become a burden in his life? The sound of rain intensified outside. Eleanor closed the album and looked around the living room. Every piece of furniture, every object, every plant had been purchased or cared for by her. It was her house, built with her sweat, her tears, her dreams. But she hadn't felt at home for a long time. The phone rang, interrupting her melancholy thoughts. It was Marlene, her only true friend. "Eleanor, dear, how are you?" "Fine, Marlene, as always." The lie came automatically. "Liar. I've known you for 40 years. What's going on?" Eleanor sighed deeply. Marlene was the only person in the world with whom she could still be honest. She told her about the morning, about Vanessa's comment, about the constant feeling of being a nuisance in her own life. "Eleanor, this can't continue like this. You need to do something." "What can I do, Marlene? It's my family. It's all I have." "Your family should treat you with respect, not like a maid who also pays the household bills." Marlene's words echoed in Eleanor's mind long after hanging up the phone. She spent the rest of the afternoon reflecting, walking through the empty house, looking at each room with different eyes. When the family returned, it was already night. They came loaded with shopping bags, talking animatedly about the day. Robert seemed more optimistic. Perhaps the interview had gone well. Vanessa showed off a new haircut, and Julie displayed her freshly done nails. "I'm glad you all had fun," said Eleanor, genuinely happy to see them in good spirits. "Oh, Mom, the interview was great. I think it'll work out this time," said Robert, hugging her quickly before heading to the couch. "And Julie and I scheduled a photo session for her birthday. It's going to be beautiful," added Vanessa, without even looking at Eleanor. "Photo session?" Eleanor couldn't hide the concern in her voice. She knew it would be another expense. "Relax, Grandma. It's not that expensive. Just $2,000, said Julie casually, as if it were an insignificant amount. Eleanor felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. $2,000 represented more than half of her pension, but she looked at her granddaughter's excited face and couldn't say, "No, and of course, dear, if it's important to you." That night, Eleanor stayed awake late. Staring at the ceiling of her bedroom, she calculated and recalculated the bills in her head. With the photo session, the salon, the monthly shopping, and all the other expenses, very little would be left for her. She might have to cut her blood pressure medication again. But it wasn't just the money that bothered her. It was the feeling of invisibility, of being just a source of resources, never a person with feelings, dreams, or needs. When was the last time someone had genuinely worried about her? When had someone asked about her dreams, her wishes? The rain continued falling outside, and Eleanor closed her eyes, trying to push away the dark thoughts. Tomorrow would be another identical day, and she would continue being the silent shadow in her own home. 2 weeks later, Robert finally got the job. The news arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon, and for the first time in a long time, the house breathed genuine joy. Eleanor watched her son on the phone confirming details with his future boss, and felt a surge of pride she hadn't experienced in years. "Mom, we're going to celebrate." Robert hung up the phone with a smile she hadn't seen in years. "We're going out to dinner tonight, all of us. My first paycheck won't arrive until next month, but today is special." Eleanor hesitated. She knew that "we're going out to dinner" meant she would pay the bill, as always, but seeing her son happy was worth any sacrifice. "Of course, Robert. You deserve to celebrate." Vanessa appeared in the living room, already getting ready for the occasion. She wore a new dress that Eleanor didn't recognize, probably bought with the money from the photo session that hadn't even happened yet. "Wonderful. Let's go to Ocean Terrace, that new restaurant downtown. I heard the food is divine," said Vanessa, applying red lipstick to her lips. Eleanor swallowed hard. She knew the place, an expensive restaurant, the kind she would never frequent by choice, but it was her son's happiness at stake. "Grandma, are you wearing that?" Julie appeared, pointing to Eleanor's simple dress, one of 3 she owned for special occasions. Eleanor looked at herself in the hallway mirror. The navy blue dress was clean and pressed, but too simple compared to the family's elaborate look. She felt inadequate, as always. "It's all I have, dear." "Just leave her like that, Julie," interrupted Vanessa with that seemingly carefree tone that Eleanor had learned to fear. "Your grandmother has a unique style." The comment was accompanied by a little laugh that made Eleanor lower her eyes. Robert said nothing, pretending to be busy choosing a tie. The restaurant was exactly as Eleanor had imagined, elegant, expensive, and intimidating. The maitre d' led them to a table in the center of the dining room, very visible. Eleanor wished she could hide in a dark corner. "This place is incredible," exclaimed Julie, looking around with sparkling eyes. "Only the best to celebrate Dad's new job," said Vanessa, picking up the menu. "Eleanor, don't be shy. Choose something special." Eleanor flipped through the menu, feeling her heart tighten as she saw the prices. Her simple dish cost the equivalent of a week's worth of groceries at the market. She opted for the cheapest thing she found, a salad. "Just that, Mom? We're celebrating," said Robert. "I'm fine with this, son." The conversation flowed naturally. Among the 3 of them, Robert talking about expectations for the new job, Vanessa planning changes they would make to the house with his salary, Julie talking about plans for her birthday. Eleanor just listened, nodding occasionally, feeling increasingly like an outside observer of that family. The dishes arrived sumptuous and well presented. Eleanor picked at her salad, while the others devoured fine meats and elaborate side dishes. Vanessa ordered a bottle of wine to accompany, to make the celebration complete. "You know, Robert," Vanessa said, twirling the wine glass in her hand, "now that you have a job, we can finally do that renovation in the bedroom, and maybe replace the living room couch." "Take it easy, honey. Let's see how the financial situation looks first," Robert replied. But Eleanor noticed that he too was excited about the possibilities. Of course, but we can dream, can't we?" Vanessa smiled, then her gaze turned to Eleanor. "By the way, Eleanor, maybe it's time for you to spruce yourself up a bit too. How about some highlights in your hair? That modern cut that's in fashion?" Eleanor automatically touched her hair. She hadn't been to the hairdresser in months, saving for the family's expenses. "Vanessa is right, Mom. You deserve to take care of yourself," Robert supported his wife, but Eleanor noticed that he barely looked at her while speaking. I like my hair this way," murmured Eleanor. "Oh, Eleanor," Vanessa sighed dramatically. "You need to stop settling. Look how we take care of ourselves, how we value ourselves. It's important for self-esteem." Julie, who until then had remained quiet, laughed softly. "It's true, Grandma. You could try to be more modern." The word echoed in Eleanor's mind like a slap. Modern, as if she were an outdated relic, an out-of-fashion object that embarrassed the family. "And that dress," continued Vanessa, pretending to whisper but speaking loud enough for Eleanor to hear perfectly, "looks like it came out of my grandmother's closet." "Who died 10 years ago?" Julie laughed louder this time, and even Robert cracked a smile. Eleanor felt her face burn with humiliation. She looked around the restaurant, noticing that other people at nearby tables had stopped talking to watch. "Vanessa, don't be like that with my mother," Robert said without much conviction, still smiling. "Oh, Robert, it's just a joke. Your mother knows it's with affection, right, Eleanor?" Eleanor nodded mechanically as she always did, but this time something different happened in her chest. A strange sensation, as if something was breaking inside. "You know what concerns me most," Vanessa continued, now clearly enjoying the situation, "is that people must think we're a careless family, that we don't care about appearances. Eleanor, don't you realize how you represent us?" The words cut Eleanor like knives. She looked at her son, hoping he would say something, that he would defend her, but Robert was busy cutting his meat, avoiding her gaze. "Mom, stop it," said Julie, but she was laughing, as if it were really just an innocent joke. Eleanor felt tears forming in her eyes. She couldn't cry there, not in public. She breathed deeply, trying to control herself. I need to go to the bathroom, she managed to say, rising from the table. In the restaurant bathroom, Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a 72-year-old woman, white hair, simple dress, eyes red from held-back tears. She saw years of sacrifice, dedication, unconditional love reduced to a dinner joke. She wet her face with cold water, trying to compose herself. It's just a phase, she said to herself, as she always did. They don't mean any harm. But when she returned to the table, the conversation continued in the same tone. Vanessa was now criticizing Eleanor's posture, the way she held her cup, even the way she chewed. Eleanor, don't be angry with us. It's for your own good. We want you to feel better about yourself, said Vanessa with that fake smile. It was at that moment, looking at the faces of her family, Robert avoiding her gaze, Julie laughing softly, Vanessa with that expression of superiority, that something definitely broke inside Eleanor. She slowly rose from her chair. For the first time in years, her voice came out firm and clear. Vanessa, you can stop talking about me as if I weren't here. Silence fell over the table like a heavy curtain. Vanessa blinked, surprised. Eleanor, I was just... You were humiliating me, publicly. Eleanor opened her purse and took out enough money to pay for her portion of the bill. You can finish dinner without me. I'm going home. Mom, wait. Robert tried to stand, but Eleanor was already walking toward the exit. Outside the restaurant, Eleanor breathed in the cool night air. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear. It was adrenaline, a sensation she hadn't experienced in decades. She had defended herself. Finally. As she walked home, Eleanor felt something changing inside her. She didn't yet know what she would do, but she knew she could no longer go back to being the same person who had entered that restaurant. Eleanor arrived home before the family, something that rarely happened. The house was quiet, and for the first time she felt she belonged to that place. She sat in the living room chair and stayed there, just breathing, processing what she had just done. The phone rang. It was Marlene. Eleanor, how was the celebration? Dinner? Eleanor told her everything, from the malicious comments to the moment she stood up from the table. Marlene remained silent on the other end of the line. Eleanor, I am proud of you. Proud? Marlene, I abandoned my family at a restaurant. You defended yourself. Finally. When the family arrived an hour later, the tension was palpable. Robert entered first with a serious face. Vanessa came right behind, clearly irritated. Julie seemed confused, torn between loyalty to her mother and affection for her grandmother. Mom, we need to talk, said Robert, sitting on the couch. Eleanor remained in the armchair, upright, with a dignity she didn't know she possessed. I'm listening. What was that at the restaurant? You left us in an embarrassing situation. Embarrassing? Eleanor repeated the words slowly. Robert, did you hear how your wife spoke to me throughout dinner? Vanessa was trying to help. She cares about you. Eleanor looked at Vanessa, who remained standing, arms crossed, showing no remorse. Eleanor, Vanessa finally spoke, I know you were upset, but I was really trying to help you. You need to understand that sometimes the truth hurts. The truth? Eleanor stood up, feeling a courage she didn't know where it came from. The truth, Vanessa, is that you disrespected me in front of my granddaughter, my son, and strangers. The truth is that you've been living at my expense for years and think that gives you the right to treat me however you want. The silence that followed was so dense that Eleanor could hear her own heartbeat. Mom, Robert tried to mediate, no one is disrespecting anyone. We're a family. A family? Eleanor laughed bitterly. Robert, when was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time anyone in this house worried about me as a person, not as a source of money? That's not fair, Mom. I worry about you. Do you? Eleanor walked to the table where she kept the household bills. Do you know how much it costs to maintain this house? Do you know how much of my pension goes to your expenses, to your wife's whims, to Julie's spending? Robert lowered his gaze. He knew, everyone knew, but no one ever talked about it openly. Grandma, Julie tried to approach, but Eleanor raised her hand. "No, dear. This time I'm going to speak." Eleanor looked at each of them. "I wake up every day at 5 in the morning to prepare your breakfast. I wash the clothes, clean the house, pay the bills. And what do I get in return? Jokes about my appearance, about my age, about my choices." Vanessa snorted. "Eleanor, you're exaggerating. Everyone jokes in a family." "Jokes?" Eleanor's voice rose. "Vanessa, you systematically humiliate me. You make jokes about my appearance, criticize my clothes, my hair, my posture, and you," she turned to Robert, "you stay silent, as if I deserved this treatment." Robert looked like a child being scolded. "Mom, I didn't know you felt this way. Of course you knew. You just pretended not to know because it was more comfortable that way." Eleanor returned to the armchair, but this time remained standing. "Well, things are going to change from now on." "Change how?" asked Vanessa with a challenging tone. "Starting tomorrow, you will take on the financial responsibilities of this house. Robert, you have a job now. Vanessa, you can work too. You're not children anymore." "Mom, be reasonable," Robert tried to argue. "My salary isn't enough to maintain the whole house." "Then you'll have to adapt. Learn to live within your means." Vanessa laughed sarcastically. "Eleanor, are you going senile? This is our house, our family. You can't just decide this on your own." Eleanor turned to Vanessa with an expression the young woman had never seen before. Her eyes shone with iron determination. "Vanessa, this is my house. I pay the rent, I pay the bills, I buy the food, and if this is our family, then everyone will contribute as a family." "And if we don't agree?" challenged Vanessa. Eleanor didn't hesitate in her response. "Then you can look for somewhere else to live." The silence that followed was deafening. No one expected Eleanor to reach this point. "Grandma, you can't be serious," said Julie, and with tears in her eyes. Eleanor approached her granddaughter and held her hands tenderly. "Julie, dear, I love all of you. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It doesn't mean giving up my dignity." In the days that followed, the house was in a tense atmosphere. Robert tried to process the changes, torn between loyalty to his mother and pressure from his wife. Vanessa alternated between moments of hostile silence and outbursts of indignation. Julie observed everything with the confusion typical of someone learning about the complexity of family relationships. Eleanor, for her part, remained firm. On the first day, when Vanessa expected her to prepare breakfast as always, Eleanor simply had her coffee and left the house. She returned in the late afternoon with shopping bags, new clothes for herself. "Eleanor, where were you all day?" asked Robert when she arrived. "Taking care of myself," she replied simply, showing a new dress she had bought. Vanessa observed the bags with contempt. "Wasting money while talking about savings. Spending my money on myself for the first time in years," Eleanor corrected. That night, Eleanor didn't cook for the family. She prepared only her own meal and ate alone, reading a book she had bought at the bookstore. "Mom, aren't you going to cook for us?" asked Robert. "You have hands, Robert, and so does your wife." It was Julie who broke the ice a few days later. She approached her grandmother while Eleanor watered the plants in the yard. "Grandma, I don't really understand what's happening, but I think you're right." Eleanor stopped watering and looked at her granddaughter. "Why do you think that, dear?" "Because for the first time you seem alive. Before, you always seemed sad, even when you smiled." Her granddaughter's words touched Eleanor deeply. She hugged Julie, feeling that at least one person in the family was beginning to understand. "Julie, I don't want to destroy our family. I just want all of us to treat each other with respect." "I understand, Grandma, and I'll help. I'll talk to my parents." Eleanor smiled, feeling that perhaps there was hope for a real change, but the greater resistance was yet to come. Vanessa was not willing to accept the new dynamic so easily. She began to articulate strategies to reverse the situation, using all her manipulative skill to try to regain the control she had lost. The real battle was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Eleanor's revolution, and the house breathed a different tension. Robert had begun to contribute financially, though with visible reluctance. Vanessa, in turn, had intensified her psychological manipulation tactics, alternating between victimization and passive aggression. It was a Saturday morning when Vanessa decided to make her final move. Eleanor was in the kitchen, preparing only her own coffee, when her daughter-in-law appeared with an expression of false concern. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you. I'm very worried." Eleanor continued stirring her coffee without turning around. "Worried about what, Vanessa?" "About you. This behavior isn't normal. You've always been such a generous person, so dedicated to the family. Robert is thinking that you might have some problem, related to age." Eleanor finally turned, facing Vanessa calmly. "Oh, so now I have mental problems because I want to be treated with respect." "It's not that, Eleanor. But you have to admit that these sudden changes are concerning. Maybe we should talk to a doctor." The suggestion that she was mentally incapable was the last straw. Eleanor set the cup down on the sink with more force than she intended. "Vanessa, you've crossed the line." "Eleanor, I'm just trying to help." "Help?" Eleanor approached her daughter-in-law, and for the first time, Vanessa backed away. "Vanessa, you're trying to discredit me, make it seem like I've lost the ability to make decisions about my own life. This has a name. It's called psychological abuse." Robert appeared in the kitchen, attracted by the raised voices. "What's going on here?" "Robert," Vanessa turned to her husband with tears in her eyes, "your mother is accusing me of terrible things. I just suggested that maybe she should talk to a doctor about these behavior changes." Robert looked between the two women, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom, maybe it's not a bad idea to get a checkup." "Robert," Eleanor's voice came out low but laden with deep disappointment, "your father would turn in his grave if he knew you were questioning your own mother's mental sanity because she decided to defend herself." The mention of his father had an immediate effect on Robert. Joseph had always treated Eleanor with respect and affection, even in the most difficult moments. "Mom, I'm not questioning." "Yes, you are." Eleanor headed to the living room, followed by both of them. "You two are trying to convince me that I'm losing my mind because I finally decided that I deserve to be treated with dignity in my own home." Julie came down the stairs at that moment, immediately sensing the tension in the air. "What's happening?" "Your grandmother is having a crisis," said Vanessa dramatically. "I am not having any crisis." Eleanor raised her voice for the first time in weeks. "I'm having awareness." Eleanor's shout echoed through the house, surprising everyone, including herself. But instead of apologizing as she always did, she remained firm. "Julie," Eleanor addressed her granddaughter, "do you think I'm crazy for wanting to be respected in my own home?" The young girl looked at her mother, then at her father, and finally at her grandmother. "No, Grandma, I think you're right." "Julie," Vanessa reprimanded her daughter. "No, Mom, Grandma is right." Julie positioned herself next to Eleanor. "You really do treat Grandma badly. I always thought so, but I never had the courage to say it." Julie's declaration created a new dynamic in the room. Robert seemed to wake from a trance, looking around as if seeing the situation for the first time. "Julie, you shouldn't get involved in adult matters," said Vanessa, but her voice sounded less convincing. "Mom, I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore. And I can see when someone is being mistreated." Robert ran his hand over his face, visibly shaken. "Mom, I didn't realize that—" "Yes, you did, Robert. You just chose to ignore it because it was more convenient." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It wasn't tense or hostile, but reflective. Robert seemed to be processing years of behavior that he had normalized. "What do you want me to do, Mom?" Eleanor took a deep breath. That was the question she had been waiting for years. "I want you to treat me as a family member, not as a maid who pays the bills. I want my opinions to be respected. I want you to stop the cruel jokes about my appearance or age. And I want you to take on your financial responsibilities as adults." "And if we don't agree?" Vanessa still tried to challenge. Eleanor looked directly into her daughter-in-law's eyes. "Then you can leave my house. You can't kick us out. Robert is your son. And precisely because he is my son is why he should treat me better." Eleanor turned to Robert. Your father taught me that love without respect is not true love. It's dependency." Robert lowered his head, clearly affected by his mother's words. "Mom, I'm sorry, I really didn't realize how you felt." "Yes, you did, Robert, but now you have a chance to do things differently." Vanessa realized she was losing control of the situation. Her manipulation tactics weren't working against the new Eleanor. "Fine," she finally said reluctantly. "But I want it to be clear that I don't agree with any of this." "You don't have to agree, Vanessa. You just have to respect." In the months that followed, the dynamics of the house changed completely. Robert and Vanessa took on the household expenses, although initially with resistance. Eleanor, for the first time in years, had money left over from her pension. With that money, she did something she hadn't done in decades. She invested in herself. She enrolled in painting classes, an old dream she had abandoned when she got married. She bought new clothes, went to the hairdresser, started attending cultural events downtown. The physical transformation was remarkable, but the inner transformation was even more impressive. Eleanor carried herself with a dignity that radiated to everyone around her. Julie became her greatest ally and companion. The two developed a relationship of complicity, with the young girl often accompanying her grandmother in her cultural activities. "Grandma, you look like a completely different person," said Julie one day as they visited an art exhibition. "I'm not different, dear. I just went back to being who I really was before I forgot that I mattered too." Robert gradually began to behave differently. Without Vanessa constantly reinforcing the toxic dynamic, he began to rediscover the respect he always had for his mother. Vanessa was the one who resisted the changes the most. She tried several times to regain control, but each attempt was frustrated by Eleanor's new firm stance and the growing support from Julie and, eventually, Robert. The definitive turning point came 6 months later during Eleanor's birthday. For the first time in years, the family organized a party for her. Not a party that she paid for and organized, but a true tribute. Robert had prepared a speech. "Mom, I want to apologize for all the years I didn't value you as I should have. You dedicated your life to our family, and we repaid you with ingratitude. Today I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything you've done for us, and especially grateful that you had the courage to teach us what family really means." Eleanor cried, but this time they were tears of joy and relief. Even Vanessa, though still reluctant, had contributed to the party, not with enthusiasm, but with a resigned acceptance of the new reality. "Grandma," said Julie during the party, "you taught me that we should never accept being treated as less than we deserve. That's a lesson I'll carry for life." That night, when everyone went to bed, Eleanor stayed in the living room looking at pictures from the party. She saw herself surrounded by people who finally treated her with the respect she always deserved. She picked up the phone and called Marlene. "Marlene, you were right. It was worth fighting." "How do you feel, Eleanor?" Eleanor looked around her house, no longer a place where she felt like an intruder, but truly her home. "I feel at home, Marlene. Finally, I feel at home." At 72, Eleanor had learned that it's never too late to reclaim our dignity, that true love includes respect, and that sometimes we need to fight for our place in the world, even if it's within our own family. She had come out of the shadows and returned to shining with her own light. And in doing so, she had taught everyone around her the true meaning of family, respect, and self-love. Eleanor's story proves that age is just a number when it comes to the courage to change, that it's never too late to say no to disrespect and yes to our own dignity. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Eleanor's journey has touched your hearts as much as it touched ours. Her story reminds us that we all deserve respect and dignity, regardless of age. To continue following inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Your comments are very important to us. Share your own experiences or how this story impacted you. Every day we bring narratives that explore the complexity of life and the strength of the human spirit. Eleanor taught us that it's never too late to start over and reclaim our place in the world. Don't miss our upcoming content, and remember, you too deserve to be